Buying new military gear isn't supposed to be a decade-and-a-half-long national soap opera. It's supposed to be a technical process. You balance capability, cost, and what it does for your local industry. You sign a contract, and eventually, you get new equipment. But Canada's effort to replace its ancient fighter jets has been a total mess. It's been a story of political games, broken promises, public outrage, and intense international pressure. This saga has dragged on for so long, it's held multiple governments hostage, and it's all ended with a deep, burning frustration in the one capital that matters most to Canada's security: Washington, D.C. The Pentagon, the command center of the world's most powerful military, is furious. And to get why, you have to understand the excruciating story of how a straightforward purchase became a symbol of indecision and unreliability.
For over a decade, Canada's leaders played a dangerous game with their most important military ally. While its fighter jets were literally falling apart, Ottawa canceled deals, flip-flopped on promises, and openly flirted with rival jet makers. The Pentagon was not amused. This is the story of how Canada's decade of indecision over a single fighter jet created a deep rift with the United States, and how the consequences are still being felt today. Before we get into the political firestorm, we have to talk about the machine at the center of it all, the CF-18 Hornet. To call these jets aging is a massive understatement. The Royal Canadian Air Force, or RCAF, started getting its 138 Hornets way back in 1982. At the time, they were incredible aircraft, a huge leap forward. They were the sentinels of Canadian sovereignty, the country's main contribution to NORAD, and a credible force for NATO missions. For decades, they served well in the First Gulf War, Kosovo, Libya, and the fight against ISIS. But you can't beat time. These jets were built for a 20-year service life. We're now more than 40 years past their introduction. Of the original 138 jets, the functional number is reportedly fewer than 80, and even that might be optimistic. The airframes are tired. Metal fatigue isn't something you can just patch up with duct tape. It's a deep structural breakdown from years of high G turns and exposure to the elements. Just keeping them in the air is a Herculean task for RCAF technicians, who often have to cannibalize some jets for parts just to keep others flying. This isn't just a maintenance headache, it's a strategic crisis. The RCAF's core missions aren't optional. Under NORAD, the pact forged in the Cold War, Canada is responsible for defending its own airspace, which is the northern gateway to the United States. Potential adversaries, with their long-range bombers and cruise missiles, don't care that your jets are old. And as a founding member of NATO, Canada is expected to pull its weight. When your allies are flying fifth-generation stealth fighters, showing up with a 1980s-era jet is like bringing a musket to a gunfight. The world changed, and the tech changed with it. Canada's crumbling fleet wasn't just a problem. It was a glaring vulnerability for the entire Western alliance. Everyone knew a replacement was desperately overdue. And that's what makes the chaos that followed so infuriating to its allies. The Pentagon's anger didn't happen overnight. It was a slow burn, fueled by years of Canadian decisions and reversals that, from Washington's point of view, painted Canada as an unreliable and unserious partner. To get the full picture, we have to break this drama down into 4 acts. The modern version of this story starts in 2010. Prime Minister Stephen Harper's Conservative government made a bold and politically disastrous move.
Canada had been a partner in the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter program for years, so the government announced it would buy 65 F-35s in a sole source deal, initially valued at $9 billion. Militarily, this made perfect sense. The F-35 was designed to be the backbone of NATO air power for the next 50 years. Buying it meant Canada could fight seamlessly alongside its allies. The thinking was, why waste time and money on a competition when the winner is obvious? But the public relations were a catastrophe. The government was accused of hiding the true cost. The independent parliamentary budget officer dropped a bombshell report suggesting the lifetime cost would be closer to $30 billion, not the $9 billion sticker price. The media called the F-35 a flying credit card with no spending limit, and the opposition parties smelled blood. This is where the political drama exploded. The F-35 became a symbol of government waste. In the 2015 election, Liberal leader Justin Trudeau made a crystal-clear promise. His government would not buy the F-35. He vowed to scrap the plan, launch a fair and open competition, and find a cheaper jet. When Trudeau won, he was stuck with that promise. For the Pentagon, this was the first major betrayal. A partner nation, deeply invested in the F-35's development, had just backed out because of domestic politics. And just like that, the trust started to break down. A reliable partner had just shown they could be unreliable, and the saga was only getting started. After vowing to kill the F-35 deal, Trudeau's new government was in a jam. The CF-18s were still falling apart, and the need for a new jet was even more urgent. Their solution was a bizarre, convoluted process that dragged on for 7 years, driving the Pentagon and aerospace companies crazy. First, they invented a capability gap and proposed buying 18 Boeing Super Hornets as an interim fix. This just confused everyone. Defense experts pointed out that adding a second, small fleet of different jets would be a logistical nightmare. It was a political move to look busy while delaying the real decision. That interim plan eventually died thanks to a trade dispute between Boeing and Canada's Bombardier, but not before wasting more time. Finally, in 2017, the government launched its open and transparent competition. The contenders were the F-35, the Swedish Saab Gripen, the Boeing Super Hornet, and for a while, the Eurofighter Typhoon and French Rafale. Washington was deeply skeptical from day one. To the U.S. military, the F-35 was the only jet that could meet Canada's future NORAD and NATO duties. Its stealth and networked sensors were non-negotiable for modern combat. They figured any fair competition based on military needs would pick the F-35 anyway. So, the whole multi-year contest looked like expensive political theater designed to give the government cover to eventually choose the very plane they promised not to buy. During this time, Ottawa was playing the field, seriously considering the Saab Gripen. The Gripen is a great 4.5 generation jet, cheaper to fly and easier to maintain. But it wasn't a 5th generation stealth fighter. To the Pentagon, Canada thinking about the Gripen was like a partner in a high-tech venture suddenly wanting to switch to older, incompatible tech. It suggested politics and industrial benefits were overriding critical security needs. In November 2021, Boeing was out, leaving the F-35 and the Gripen as the two finalists. For the Pentagon, this was it. The choice was between the fully integrated, top-tier Allied fighter and a Swedish alternative that would create huge headaches. The years of flirting were over, but the damage to Canada's reputation was already done. To really get why the Pentagon was so mad, you need to know one word: interoperability. It sounds like dry military jargon, but it's the absolute foundation of the U.S.-Canada defense relationship. And Canada's dithering threatened to smash that foundation to pieces. Interoperability isn't just about radios working together. In modern war, it's a seamless, shared network of data. The F-35 isn't just a plane. It's a flying, stealthy data hub. It sucks up information about enemy planes, ground threats, electronic signals, and shares it in real time with other F-35s, ships, and command centers. The U.S. and its allies are building their entire 21st century war-fighting strategy around this concept. Now, imagine dropping a different jet, like the Saab Gripen, into that ecosystem. The Gripen can use NATO weapons and talk to allies, but it's not a native part of the F-35's encrypted, stealthy data network. It's like trying to have a secure group chat on iMessage when one person insists on using a 10-year-old Android. They can send basic texts, but they're cut off from the full, seamless features. In a fight, that's a fatal vulnerability.
This matters most for NORAD, the joint command that defends North America. For 60 years, NORAD has been about total integration. Canadians and Americans sit side by side, sharing the same radar picture and commanding each other's jets. The closest plane responds to a threat, no matter the flag on its tail. The Pentagon's vision is a single, impenetrable sensor network of American and Canadian F-35s. If Canada chose the Gripen, that seamlessness would disappear. The RCAF would be a second-tier partner in defending its own continent. This led to the most explosive moment of the whole saga, a public warning from U.S. Ambassador Pete Hoekstra in January 2026. He said if Ottawa backed away from the F-35, the NORAD pact would have to be altered. He warned the U.S. would have to fill the gaps by flying its own jets into Canadian airspace. This was an unprecedented public threat. The message was brutal. If you don't buy our jet, you're handing over control of your own airspace to us. We will defend the continent, with or without you. For the Pentagon, it was the logical result of Canada's indecision. The last piece of the puzzle is about money, jobs, and the deal itself. The F-35 wasn't just a plane. It was a massive industrial program. And Canada wasn't just a customer. It was a founding partner. Canada got on board way back in 1997, and by 2002 had committed significant funds as a Level 3 partner in the jet's development. This gave Canadian aerospace companies the right to bid on contracts to build parts for every F-35 built, for any country. And they were wildly successful, winning billions in contracts for landing gear, engine parts, and software.
This is why Canada's political games were so infuriating to Washington. For years, Canadian industry was cashing in on the partnership. Companies were hiring people based on F-35 work. Yet their own government was publicly trashing the plane and trying to buy something else. From the U.S. perspective, Canada was having its cake and eating it too. This tension was amplified by Saab's brilliant counteroffer. The Swedish company didn't just offer a plane, it offered a whole new industrial deal. Saab put forward an unsolicited proposal for 72 Gripen EF fighters and 6 GlobalEye surveillance aircraft. It promised deep technology transfer and a powerful, Made in Canada pitch, partnering with aerospace giant Bombardier and dangling the promise of up to 12,600 Canadian jobs. This offer was politically irresistible. It presented a choice: stay dependent on an unpredictable American partner, or grab a chance for industrial independence. For the new government of Prime Minister Mark Carney, which by early 2026 was reviewing the deal amid a trade war with the U.S., Saab's proposal was incredibly tempting. The Pentagon saw its long-term partner, after benefiting from the F-35 program for 2 decades, on the verge of throwing it all away, blowing a hole in both the Allied industrial base and the security of North America. The strain was at a breaking point. After more than a decade of political drama, a decision was finally made. In March 2022, the government announced the F-35 was the winner of its competition. And in January 2023, the deal for 88 jets was signed. It seemed like the saga was over. The Pentagon was getting what it wanted. But this is the Canadian procurement story, so of course, it wasn't that simple. By January of 2026, the political winds had shifted again. A new government, under Prime Minister Mark Carney, facing public sticker shock and intense political pressure, ordered a review of the monumental deal. While the contract for the first 16 jets was locked in, the remaining 72, the vast majority of the fleet, were suddenly back in question. Defense Minister David McGuinty confirmed the acquisition remains under review, citing concerns over cost, jobs, and sovereignty. The ghosts of the past came roaring back. All the old arguments resurfaced. The RCAF insisted the F-35 was the only jet for the job. But the pro-Gripen argument was now politically stronger. Public polls showed opposition to buying more F-35s, and Saab's Made in Canada offer, with its promise of jobs, was a powerful lure for a government focused on the economy. The idea of a mixed fleet, keeping 16 F-35s and buying Gripens for the rest, gained serious traction. And that's where things stand today, in limbo, with the entire U.S.-Canada defense relationship hanging in the balance. The Pentagon's worst fears have come true. The decision they thought was settled has been reopened, cementing Canada's image as an unreliable, indecisive partner. This is the ultimate scar left by a decade of dysfunction. Even if Canada buys all 88 F-35s, the trust has been broken. The U.S. ambassador's warning that NORAD would have to be altered was a line that, once crossed, can't be uncrossed. It revealed a fracture in the alliance, showing Washington was willing to use its muscle in a way many Canadians saw as bullying. This, in turn, fueled more political opposition to the F-35, creating a vicious cycle of distrust. The Pentagon is angry, not just because Canada might pick another jet. It's angry because the whole process revealed a huge clash of priorities. Washington sees a critical threat that needs a specific, integrated solution. It sees a Canada that seems to view the purchase as a jobs program or a political headache. The whole mess has forced the U.S. to ask a very uncomfortable question. Is Canada still a serious military partner, or just a hesitant neighbor that can't be fully counted on? The long, tortured story of Canada's fighter jet replacement is about more than just a plane. It's a case study in how domestic politics and national pride can collide with the hard realities of global security. For over a decade, Canada's indecision sent a clear message to its most important ally. We're not sure. We're not sure about the cost, the jobs, or even our relationship with you.
While the F-35 was eventually chosen, the damage was done. The current government's review of that very decision has ripped open every old wound and reinforced the Pentagon's view of Canada as a partner that can't make up its mind. The anger in Washington comes from this feeling of unreliability, that when it comes to defending North America, Canada can no longer be counted on to make the tough calls. This saga leaves Canadians with a difficult question. What is our country's true place in the world? Are we willing to pay for the high-cost, high-tech tools needed to be a serious partner in a dangerous world? Or are we destined to be a hesitant middle power, forever caught between our alliances and our own internal squabbles? The final chapter has yet to be written, but the scars on the Canada-US relationship won't be fading anytime soon. If you found this breakdown interesting, make sure you subscribe and hit the bell for notifications. We rely on your support to keep making in-depth videos on geopolitics and military affairs. And if you want to support us even more, check out the links to our newsletter and other resources in the description. Thanks for watching.